The latest next in the war between Israel and Hamas. Qatar, which is a key mediator in ceasefire negotiations. It says it's working to establish a permanent end to the fighting, not a short-term ceasefire. And that's a key Hamas demand. A Qatari foreign minister spokesperson adds talks are nowhere close to a ceasefire deal at this point. Also this morning, the head of the European Commission is urging an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
Right now, there is only one way to restore an adequate flow of humanitarian aid. The people of Gaza need an immediate humanitarian pause that would lead to a sustainable ceasefire, and they need it now.
This is video into us from Gaza Civil Defense. Agence France Presse says it shows people being rescued yesterday from under rubble in Gaza City. As we were reporting to you yesterday at this time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is signaling a ground offensive into Rafah will go ahead. But there's no new indication of when that could begin, and CNN is quoting Israeli officials as saying it is not imminent. Reuters reports this morning European Union leaders will urge Israel to hold off on the Rafah offensive. That call is expected at next week's summit. In another development this morning, a ship carrying tons of food aid is now sailing toward Gaza. And from Jerusalem, Sarah Coates brings us the latest.
We do know now that this Spanish NGO ship, the Open Arms, loaded up with around 200 tons of humanitarian aid, carrying a barge behind it, which reportedly has rice, flour and other protein, has now left Larnaca port in Cyprus, bound for Gaza after being inspected yesterday by Israeli forces. This trip is expected to take around 2 days. The journey is around 320 kilometres, although at this stage, Heather, it is unclear as to when this ship actually does arrive, where it will actually dock, and then how this humanitarian aid will get onto land and then be distributed, given that there are no working ports in the Gaza Strip. Although the organiser, the World Central Kitchen, has come out to say that it is now creating a jetty of its own using rubble from a number of destroyed buildings in Gaza, although no timeline yet on when that will happen.
Sarah, getting aid into Gaza by ship, this seems to be sort of the latest aspect to the growing international push to get more food into the people in Gaza. Canada will be part of that effort. So explain to us why this sea route is seen as being so desperately needed.
Well, Heather, this comes after a dire warning by the United Nations that a quarter of the population in the Gaza Strip is on the brink of famine. We do know, of course, that most of these border crossings have been shut off by Israel. Barely any trucks have been getting in. According to aid groups, half of the amount of trucks that went in January made it through in February. So this really goes to show the dire need that these people are facing there. And over the last few days, we've also seen many countries, including a joint mission between Jordan and Canada, airdropping supplies over the Gaza Strip. But this has really been seen as insufficient, inadequate. And there have been a number of casualties also from these airdrops, some of these parachutes not opening, literally crushing people below who were waiting for this humanitarian aid. So it certainly comes at an extremely critical time. And we have actually just heard from the head of UNRWA, Philip Lazzarini. He's just tweeted saying that Israel has turned back a truck because it had scissors used for children's medical kits. Israel is denying this. The COGAT organisation, which is the coordination of government activities in the territories, tweeting that Lazzarini is lying. But certainly this just shows how desperate the situation is and the restrictions being put on aid going into the Strip. We also heard from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He says that there needs to be an end to this war. Also, the release of hostages, speaking about that Rafah operation that you were just talking about, saying that if this does happen, it would plunge Gaza into an even deeper circle of hell. Heather.
Sarah Coates from Jerusalem this morning.